What up, people? Crack Lemonade here, and I want to try something. Um, I have these old game magazines, and there are certain things I want to talk about in those gaming magazines. In particular, I want to talk about, for this one, March 2002 issue of Game Informer, where it previews two games. And I just want to see how one of those games did, and that is X Men Next Dimension. Now, X Men was hot in the Genesis era for me, and this was the first foray into the PlayStation 2 era, and it became a versus fighter for some reason, starting with X Men Mutant Academy. And I don't really understand why they just didn't do like an adventure type game. Um, because it doesn't seem like these games did that well anyway. But we will see. To no, I'm just playing with you. Um, on that page, there was also a preview for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, a game that we did not get in the United States, and I happen to own that game. So it's weird to me to look back in 2002 and see a JoJo game because this wasn't my thing. I've watched up to like part of Jolene's storyline on Netflix like last year, and then I got rid of Netflix, so I haven't finished it. But I did watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure for a bit. Um, and I'm not really like the biggest JoJo head, but I am a gamer, and there are a lot of games that I play with no like connection to the franchise whatsoever. And I think there's a level of enjoyment that you can get from that. I think there's a level of enjoyment that fans can get from a certain game that they watch regularly. And it's just very interesting. In 2002, they were considering making this JoJo game international release. And I just really don't know like what the state of JoJo was, or the JoJo fandom in 2002. And I am aware that there was a JoJo Bizarre Adventure game on the PlayStation and the Dreamcast, and I think that was Jotaro's part. And those games are like super expensive now. And the thing about expensive games and just the secret behind them is that they failed. Like most of the expensive games that we have now are games that when they were released, people didn't know about them. People kind of looked past them, and then somebody scooped them. Like somebody scooped it up. They played the game. They might have liked it. They might not have liked it. But then somebody else wants it, and it's out of print. So they get the choice. They get to set the price. And what ends up happening, or like, I don't want to speak in definites here. It's an observation that I've seen on some listings for games online when I was like looking or actively looking for retro games. I'm much more casual on my collection now because of the way that retro gaming prices have been. So if there's something that I can afford, cool. And it looks interesting, cool. The less I know about it, the better. I like having that kind of like adventure going on with, seeing the games that were released that nobody really cares about. I don't know. That's kind of like my mindset with retro game hunting. I try to find the games that people aren't like really like, oh my god, you should go back and play this game. And then I play it. Sometimes it's bad. Well, most times it's bad. I'm not gonna lie to you. And sometimes it's good. Now, when I purchased this game, this was before the pandemic. This game has gone up in price, as with like most Japanese games. And the trend that I've noticed with Japanese game collecting is the games that you can play without reading went up in price. The games that are heavily text the games that are heavily text based, they remain in like a similar price range. And I don't know what the idea was when people started scooping these games up, because I see way more US sellers of Japanese games now than I've ever seen. And I think it's kind of hilarious. But I did get this one from Japan and imported it prior to the pandemic, when I started my Japanese PlayStation 2 collection, which is kind of like in a stalemate position right now. Why I have the games that I have for the Japanese PS2, and that's it. So, in terms of this game, I do not know Giovanni Giorno's part in JoJo. I've not seen it. I'm not familiar with the characters. So I do apologize to any JoJo fans who watch this and like want to crucify me for not talking about the story or praising the story. Not really familiar with it. The licking of the face was kind of weird for me when I first played it, and it's just a very interesting. It's a very interesting game, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is just a very interesting franchise. The drawing style is amazing. JoJo poses are like full body workouts, because they like literally use like every muscle group imaginable to do some of those poses, man. It's just it's so dope. Uh, this game is not. I'm just not. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. The movement is very stiff, and the problem is like working in 3D spaces. I feel like fighting type games in 3D spaces suffered the most in 2002 and 2001. Like when the PlayStation 2 first came out, they had the graphic ability. Cell shading was a perfect decision here because it looks very good. The problem is that like the movement is very stiff, and if you swing at somebody and you're like a degree off, it's hard to change direction. So it just it feels very stiff. And I imagine that there are some fans of the game who like, oh man, I don't care. I just want a JoJo game. And if that's you, yeah, definitely get this game. It's not on the super expensive end the last time I checked, but it is significantly more than it was pre pandemic. And so I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. I don't know anybody's wallet situation. I'm not eyeing your pockets. You can make that decision yourself from seeing this video. And I do apologize with the clumsy menu navigation. I'm playing on a Japanese PlayStation 2. And the thing about the Japanese PlayStation and the American PlayStation is that on the American PlayStation, you select with X. On the Japanese PlayStation, you select with circle. And sometimes I forget. I definitely forget. So, um, at the beginning of the video, or not the beginning, but when the JoJo footage starts, you see me kind of like shuffling through the main menu. That is literally because I pressed X when I should have pressed circle. That's on me. Um, and same thing when I was saving there. I apologize. I didn't edit it out, but because whatever. I don't read Japanese, so I try to collect Japanese games where like reading is very minimal, and you could just actually just play the game. So what I'm gonna say is in 2002, I don't know if there was a JoJo base in the United States. And look, I'm going off of that by the price of the PlayStation 1 and Dreamcast JoJo games. They're very expensive. So it seems to me that they didn't sell well. People scooped it up. They charged a premium because there weren't that many copies made, much like the Adventures of Tronbon, another Capcom game. This is made by Capcom, by the way. And yeah, like people didn't know what it was, or not that many people bought it when it came out. And video game advertising in the 90s could be a whole different can of worms, because I don't really recall seeing a lot of like advertisements for certain games. Like the most memorable commercial for me as a child was the Final Fantasy VII commercial. Never played the game, but I remember the Final Fantasy VII commercial, and maybe I don't know if I ever really saw that many other video game commercials. Especially like on TV, like daytime TV. But I do remember seeing a Final Fantasy VII commercial. But that's the only one I really remember seeing. So, in terms of advertisements, in terms of announcements, today is completely different. Where a trailer drops online, you pop online, you watch that trailer, you're like, yo, I need to get that. And within the same day that trailer drops, people make reaction videos to the trailer, and they're like, yo, this looks hype. We didn't have that. I would say like the main way that we found out about games was going to the store and looking at games. And if you had a subscription to gaming magazines, then you knew about games a little bit quicker than others, but that was like a once a month type deal. And ultimately, it made some companies close. And again, this is like something that I feel is like more common knowledge today, because maybe in the 90s they were like, hey, gaming fans don't care about companies closing or announcements like that, so we don't make that many announcements. Of the Game Informers I have some from I think 2001 and 2002, And then I have more from between, I believe, 2006 and 2008. The rest of them, I have no idea what happened to them. And even the ones I have are like in varying conditions. Some are tattered, some are good enough that I can like actually scan the front of them with a scanner like I did with the Maximo issue. And this is also something that I do want to do a little bit more of in the future in terms of um, talking about certain things that I see in a game magazine that I think are interesting. I have a few. It takes these. We'll see how this one does, and um, I will figure out how the format of how I want to do that. But yeah, overall, I just don't think this game would have done well in the United States in 2002. It wasn't like JoJo wasn't really part of that anime revolution that kind of happened in 2002 with Toonami and Dragon Ball Z, uh, Cowboy Bebop, The Big O, and all of those other titles. The anime selection was very small in 2002, and the focus was on like original Cartoon Network shows. But you know, who knows? It's very speculative, and that's really all I gotta say about that. Game's not really that good. It's been Crack Lemonade. Peace out, y'all.